Well, hello everybody. Welcome to this episode of About Time with me, Chris Nichols. As you know, this is the series where I get the chance to chat to old friends about all the things we've done together. And these are all people who've inspired and influenced me in one way or another. And I'm absolutely delighted that today it's Elizabeth McManus who's with us. Elizabeth, welcome.
Chris, I'm delighted to see you and spend the time with you.
Mm. So I always ask the same question when I start these off because it's the best place to start, I find. People I've got on this series do so many things. I always ask, how on earth do you introduce yourself these days? What do you say?
Well, I guess where I would start would be, Chris, as you probably know, one of my favorite places is now. So I'm going to start with now. So I'm a poet and artist, and my work really, my poetry and my artwork, they invite close attention to the moments beyond the headlines, because I believe that all the moments are important, not just the big ones.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you were a poet and an artist when I first met you. You probably were, but it wasn't the title that you went under because we met quite a few years ago now.
Mm,
Um, when you were working in the Oxford group. But what was your role back in those days?
that's right. I was head of research and thought leadership in the Oxford group, and I mean, I guess there is a lot of continuity in my work in the sense that this close attention to the present moment has always been very close to my heart. And whether it's the present moment in the conditions in the workplace or the present moment in the environment, it's it's the significance of the present moment. I think everything matters, and I might express that in different ways in my work in different times. But
Yeah,
I'm in the group of people who believe everything matters.
yeah. So, oh, I mean, we could either start with the Oxford groupie stuff and the people development, or we could start with the art and poetry. But I have a feeling that we should start now. We should start with what you're doing. I mean,
Why don't we
yeah,
start now and then like unroll the previous because whether it's
yeah,
the work I did in corporate life, whether it's the business that I ran for a long time with my partner, lots of things to talk about. But maybe
yeah,
we start with now.
yeah, yeah. What on earth are you up to now?
What am I doing? Okay, well,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
I think the best way to frame it really is to say that my life really is about living a certain kind of life, which for me is a creative and contemplative life. So the question of, for example, what I do or what I'm called or whether I have a title or not, and those are interesting, but they're sort of relatively secondary
Mhm.
in that the most important thing to me most of the time has been to live a certain type of life which expresses what I believe is important.
Yeah.
And what I love more than anything else and what I believe is important is that being alive is something quite amazing, really. I think life is very vivid and significant. And I am delighted to have got some of this life. And when I wake up in the morning, I am never really got over the feeling that that is an astonishing and delightful surprise. Obviously,
Mm.
not every day is delightful, but the fact that I'm alive, I haven't really become blasé to that over time. So the work that I do now is to express that creative, contemplative life as many ways as I can, to actualize it in as many ways as I can. Um, and I suppose the outward facing parts of that are that I write poetry. I had a book published last year,
Oh,
Later
no, what was that
Icarus.
called? Yes.
It's called Later Icarus, and in fact, it lives with me at all times. So that's um,
Yeah.
and I also paint and draw.
Mhm.
Most of the painting I do is in acrylic, and a lot of it is semi-abstract landscape or inspired by nature in some way.
Mhm.
And the drawings I do are mainly ink drawings or pencil, and they are pretty much invariably portraits of
Right.
people. So those two things are the things that I spend my time doing that have a, if you like, an outflow element to them. So my paintings are in people's houses and various exhibitions and places, and my book might be in people's houses. Um, And then the second part of my life really is the more private part, which is simply living in a way that I feel is good to live, and just creating as much of that livingness as I can.
Yeah. And you use the word contemplative.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, uh, I do some work from time to time with a group of monks down here who come from a contemplative tradition, and they're Benedictines, but they're very influenced by the Desert Fathers.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
yeah. So, what kind
Um,
of contemplative are you?
well, I think that there's whenever I talk to you, Chris, there's so many things that I want to hear about from you and talk with you about. We could talk for about 6 weeks, but um, I've had an interest really for probably since I was in my teens, which I think is a very intuitive thing, and maybe even before that, about the role of silence in our lives and the role of peacefully allowing things to happen and being with them and then discerning what's good to do
Mhm.
from that position. Um, I've I had quite a lot of involvement with various types of contemplative environment. My own personal practice is Zen, um,
Right.
but I've spent quite a lot of time both experiencing and I suppose studying or spending time with people in traditions such as the Benedictines and Carmelites and other Buddhist traditions, and also people who are interested in secular environments which provide stillness. So you've kind of hit on one of my greatest passions and enjoyments here. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's I think there are so many things in life that enable us to connect to ourselves and to the entity that we're part of.
Yeah.
And while I am a very exuberant person, I also believe that quietness is a central part of that connection.
Mm.
And I seek that in as many ways as I can, and I express it in as many ways as I can.
Yeah. I mean, you made me wonder about a connection that we may or may not have, which is Stephen Batchelor. And I was wondering, is Stephen Batchelor part of your world?
Weirdly, I'm just about to crack open a Stephen Batchelor book on my to be read book pile
Oh, which one?
on solitude.
Right. Okay, I haven't read that one. Yeah. Yeah. But I've actually done very little with Stephen Batchelor, just odds and ends when he's been doing
Yeah.
meditations at Gaia House down the road.
Mm.
I've done more with Martine. Um,
Right, right.
yeah, I've done quite a lot of retreats with Martine, and I'm not a Zen practitioner at all, but
Mm.
I am a secular Buddhist of sorts, and I I was doing something with Peter Reason, an action research piece, um, in an inquiry into what would it be like to take bodies of water as sentient beings.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so I did a 6 week inquiry process that Peter was running, and I found it quite mystifying until I remembered Stephen Batchelor's little book, "What Is This?" Which is
Right.
notes on a Zen retreat, and I read that because I thought this book is going to help me get my head around
There's so
this
many, there are
inquiry.
so many,
Yeah,
there are so many joining up points, and it reminds me also of your
yeah,
that brilliant conversation you had with Bibi Tikel about giving rivers rights and
yeah.
giving nature a voice on the board and giving people a place. The other person whose work I love that you may well already be connected to is Tony Packer.
Right.
And what I love about Tony Packer's work is her sense of openness about what the agenda is and just
Right.
not having one in the way that I love about your work, where when you show up, you're with what there is. You don't bring what there's going to be with you.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think
Mm.
that's that's special, and that's quite
Yeah.
special to me in working with you.
Yeah. And the thing that made the difference to me in that Stephen Batchelor book, but he reminded me, just to say, the reason it came to my mind was when you said waking up every day and noticing the wonder of being here at all. That is, of course, the whole point of Stephen Batchelor's book. Is that we have a choice. We could wake up and go, oh God, another Monday. We're back at yeah. Oh God, I've got to get. I said, or we could just go, oh, what on earth is this? You know,
It's
how on earth
amazing.
do we come to be here at all?
I think what I often find very amazing is the extent to which we take for granted how amazing it is just to be here. I mean, the amount of things that in everyday life that I just literally take for granted. I'm walking around like, okay, here we are, we're doing this. But if you stop for a second, it is very amazing the way that it operates. And so I suppose that the reflection of that is quite important. And that, I think, has led to most of what I've done, in the sense that that causes me to think that people are important, living things are important, and moments are important. And that has pretty much been what I've spent most of my time doing in some shape or form.
Mm.
It's just serving that. It's just enjoying that, and kind of being available to it, being available to life, I think.
Mm. So if we can hop about a bit, I mean,
Yeah, let's jump around.
yeah, is that like kind of a guiding theme, like through your work at the Oxford Group? I mean, if because you were
I
in
think
people
maybe
development, yeah, you were in people development for a long time. Yeah,
maybe I could just set the context a bit. Would that be useful if I just give a quick kind of
yeah,
journey about that? I think I'll just do it in three chunks, really. When I was growing up, and until I left university, I had no particular sense of where to direct my attention. I just enjoyed what came up. I love literature, I love art, I love people, I love learning about things, enjoy being alive, kind of up. Um, Went to Oxford, studied literature, just loved that so much. Still love people, and and decided when I left university that the thing that I felt drawn to contribute to was was as many people as possible having a good experience in the world of work.
mm,
And I don't know why. I mean, that found me. I didn't really find that, but that conviction that as many people as possible should be able to have a good experience in the world of work
yeah,
was very compelling to me. And the first part of my career, I worked in that environment. I worked in the health service. Um, I worked in university environments, kind of in that field, what would have been industrial relations or other, um,
right,
I suppose you would call either harmony seeking or suffering reduction work.
right, yeah,
I like making things happen, and I'm a great believer in the reduction of suffering where possible. And then in the middle chunk of my work, my beloved partner and I ran a business together for, I mean, a long time, 20 years. Um, and in the later part of that, I worked with the Oxford Group, which
right,
is when you and I came together. But the whole way through our business, which was development alternatives, the whole way through that, the red thread was the experience people have at work, Chris, and the belief that no matter who people are, they deserve a decent experience in the workplace.
mm, mhm,
And that commonality of wish to create value and good experiences really was the thread of the work that we did. And that, I think, brought me into the Oxford Group. And my role there was to try to support the creation of the business, doing that in as many ways as possible as part of the team. And that's where you and I met.
yeah, yeah. Mm. And so in that, were you mostly a coach, a facilitator? I don't
Um,
know.
I I was
Yeah,
mostly a facilitator with groups, and um, there's no other way to put this other than putting it really. I'm kind of in love with what happens in groups. I just, the magic of groups, when you bring people together with their shared wishes, their fears, their hopes, their secret agendas, their misunderstandings. Um, and I know that you're a lover of story, and I enjoyed the conversation you had with Jeff Mead as well about storytelling. And for
mm,
me, the magic of a story and the magic of a group are very intimately connected, because where they start, where they go, and where they finish is something no one can tell.
mm,
And I loved being in service of that and trying to enable that journey with a feeling of adventure and safety. Because I believe when there's too much adventure and no safety, it's tough. in a group.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
there's too much safety and no adventure, it's also tough in a group. And so I enjoyed being with groups and facilitating that environment. That was my main love, really.
Yeah. So, do you have a sense of where that came from? I mean, how did you come to be this kind of Elizabeth?
I really like the questions you ask, mainly because I've never thought about most of them before. Um, I, hmm, I feel, I feel I was, I feel like two things. I feel I was born under a fairly merry star, really. I mean, I think I was born enjoying life and believing that this is being here is good. I think that was. I never remember not having that conviction. But I think the second thing, which is completely miraculous, really, is the family into which I was born is like the epitome of a large, complicated, living mass of lovingness.
Oh, now, how big? How big is this family? Just so I know.
Well, immediate family, I'm an only child. So there's me and there's my parents.
Right. Okay.
And then around us, there is a large extended family in Ireland and Scotland. And then there's my English family. So my lovely husband, family in England. So all those people really are the loves of my life. And what I've learned from them is everything. It's everything about how to enjoy yourself, how to make huge mistakes and be forgiven, how to bring each other more joy than you can imagine, how to break each other's hearts and still be forgiven and come back together. And that's informed everything. Two practical things. My father was a very, he was a Glaswegian boxer, footballer, trade unionist,
Yeah.
um, and taught me when I was really at primary school, there's nobody more important than me, and there's nobody less important than me. People are equally important.
Mm.
And that message I grew up with from my earliest life. When you go into the world of work, everybody is important. Do not be looking down on people, up to people, look people in the eye. And I think my mother, in a very different style, was a great believer that even if you're the only one doing something, you must do what you sincerely believe to be right.
Mm.
So that was it. So
Yeah.
I
Brilliant.
think I got lucky. I got lucky.
Yeah. Well, but that's another Buddhist thing, isn't it? I mean, I think it's in the Tibetan tradition. There's the reminders they do at the start of the meditation practice, and one of them is about the astonishingly good fortune of being born into this human life. This
Absolutely.
this human life, not any
This
vague
human
human life.
life.
This one. Yeah.
That's had a big effect on me in one respect, Chris, in that unless somebody asks me about my opinion or unless somebody asks me to talk about my life, I don't, because I I I don't own this. I didn't create this.
Mm.
I'm living what I got as fully as I can, as do we all. So it's very touching to me you would ask me about this because I don't often talk about these things. In fact, I never
Yeah.
talk about them publicly.
Yeah. But I suppose in some ways that's part of what the series is doing is understanding a bit more about the people who have inspired me and influenced me so much, and the people I've loved working with. And I was talking to Peter Shepherd the other day, very, very, very good group worker, and I said, "Well, how do you come to be doing it?" He said, "Well, one of 10 children." He said, he said, "I've been a group worker since it all started." Uh, and yours has got something about that, but again, completely different. But
Mm.
the family is in there. Hmm. So, how did you? How on earth did you decide to stop being in the Oxford group and stop doing that facilitation work to
Ah,
do this? I mean, that's
ah, the do you know the phrase "an embarrassment of riches"?
uh,
I'm not sure if that phrase happens everywhere, but I I feel sometimes that you, for me, it's been good to go where I feel drawn to go.
Yeah. Mhm.
And if I sincerely feel it's good for me to go in a certain direction, I go there. So in my employed work, when Keith and I started the business together, when I joined the Oxford Group, now as a creative contemplative, I felt the time was right for me to go more deeply into that creative and contemplative life.
Mm.
I felt that I loved the work I did with people, and I could have carried on doing it for the rest of my life. No hesitation. I loved it unreservedly. At the same time, I felt at a certain point, I need to go more deeply into these areas that I feel are very central to my life. And I think after lockdown, I worked here for 2 years on Zoom, pretty much like most people did.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that coming out of that experience, I began to realize it's time to make this change. And I had a really good period, I guess, of about a year or maybe 18 months of gradually making that change and gradually transitioning the work that I did. Um,
Mm.
have written and painted all my life, really, but
Mm.
um, the beginning of last year became the time for that to become a more public thing. And I did. So that's what I do.
Mm.
And
Wow.
in the end, there isn't really a title for living your life, is there? So I just decided to describe what I do by what I do, which is creative contemplative. And that is who I am, really.
Yeah. So it'd be brilliant to know, like, so in that transition, uh, I mean, what is in your day now? I mean, have you
Well,
started with a 4 hour sit or something? I mean, how does it work?
well, anybody who knows me really well will tell you that I do love a good rhythm of life discussion. I do love the discussion of, do we just get up and wing it through the day? Do we have a timetable? Do we have some kind of loose core of activities? Um, and that's been forming a bit in the last few years. So at the minute, how it
Yeah.
tends to look um, is that I get up, I have something to eat, I do a period of meditation. Typically, I would like to say I then go out and I go out for a good walk, or I might go for a run, or I might go to a yoga class. And I usually do that. And sometimes I get waylaid by something else and I don't do that, but usually I do that. Um,
Hmm.
and then I come back. And then the middle chunk of the day is usually it's either some version of writing, some version of painting or drawing, or some version of thinking, or I do have I do spend a certain amount of time on Zoom with people. I'm kind of available to people. So if people want to talk to me about stuff, I'm available to them. And that does happen quite a lot. Not every day, but maybe a couple of days a week, I might be on Zoom for a few hours with various people, like we're doing today, spend time together.
Hmm.
And I'm often at people's disposal to do that if that seems good to them or to me. And then at some point, I have something to eat. And then in the evening time, Keith and I will eat, we'll talk, we'll read, we'll watch something together. We might go out. So that's the kind of the general rhythm of the day. And I think you mentioned Benedictines,
Yes.
and they excel at the rhythm of the day. So I think
That,
the Benedictine way of life is a great model.
they have a lot of rhythm, rituals, and bells. Yes.
A lot.
Yeah.
So I'm aiming for a rhythm of life, really. I would say more than a particular routine. I think it's a mode de vie, as our French friends would say. It's just a way
Yeah.
of living.
Yeah. Although,
Those are the
do you know?
elements.
Yeah. So I think the Benedictines and Zen and other Buddhists have something in common around this because, of course, not the first person to notice this. I mean, Thomas Merton wrote a book about it. In fact, yeah. So,
He did.
um, but uh, and he's probably not the only one to write a book about it either. I think Rowan Williams did as well. But uh, there is something about um, both traditions don't conflate or don't separate the ritual and the living. So, like
No.
I remember saying to one of my monks I was working with about their number of officers when they go to do the prayer. And he said, he said, yeah, but he said, those are the officers. He said, that's not really where I do my prayer. I do my prayer when I'm doing woodwork. He said, he said, no, my prayer is my furniture making. He said, and of course,
Hmm.
yes, there's prayer, there's the ritual stuff that's prayer as well. He said, but I don't confuse the two. And there's something in the contemplative tradition about, yeah, the cooking is often the really spiritual act, or the walking, or it's in all of it.
I think the other term really, when you think about equal value, I think that that whole sense of people having equal value,
Mm.
moments having equal value, and back to your point about rivers, people, animals, this living entity, um, and I think that there's something really great about being aware of living the day in a way that whatever comes along, it all counts. It's not like, oh, I've got to wash the dishes so I can do like some really arty stuff. Or, I think I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to write a poem because that's like meaningful. Whereas cleaning my shoes or, you know, whatever is not important. I think that's kind of daft. Everything is important.
Yeah,
Everything's important.
yeah. And that tick that harm thing about washing the dishes to wash the dishes is actually over the sink in the Gaia house. Um,
Is that right? I've not been there. Hmm.
yeah, and it's actually, in the washing up place. It's Thich Nhat Hanh's famous little, you know, if all the time you're washing the dishes, you're thinking about the cup of tea you're going to have
Yeah.
after you finish
It's just,
washing the dishes, you'll never actually wash the dishes to wash the dishes. Yes, sir. But
there was
then,
something
yeah, go on.
there was something you said in the conversation you had with Helena. You said
Mm,
something that really it really struck her, as anybody watching it back will notice, and it really struck me as well. And you said every gesture we make that opens up the livingness in a
mm,
loving way helps something good happen.
mm,
And that is, that's like that could be over the sink in everybody's house because every single thing that we do that opens up the livingness
yeah,
in a loving way, it all counts, doesn't it? So I'm a small bit of it all counts. That's my job. Be this
mm,
little bit of it all counts. That's it. That's the work, isn't it? And it was the work
mm,
in corporate life for a long time, and it was the work in the business that we ran, and now it's the work in my poetry and my artwork
yeah.
or whatever, or washing up.
Tell us some more. Despite the equal importance of the washing up, I do want to know about the poetry and the art. So, yeah, and I find myself drawn to ask about the poetry more than the washing up. So,
That could be a
yeah,
really good call, actually. Yeah, that could be a good call. Um, well, yeah, gosh, where to start? The Okay, so the book that was published last year is called Later Icarus,
mm,
and it's poetry, and so that's what I write. I'm a poet, and um, I think what I would say about the book is that it came from two sources, really. It came from where poems normally come from, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
mm,
But the poems in the book are about the moments that get overlooked. And some of the people in the book are people from myths and legends. So Samson and Icarus and Odysseus. And the reason those people have often been in my mind is because they end up as a one headline person. If you say to somebody, Icarus, they go, oh, fell from the sky. If you say Odysseus, they go, battles. Well, or Samson, haircut.
yeah,
Nobody is a one headline life. Nobody. People aren't famous CEO, important president, big singer. People aren't a one headline story.
mm,
And so some of these poems really were me imagining what happens in one or more of those people's lives in a moment outside the headline.
aha, yeah,
And that I'm quite moved by that, the idea that people are not a one headline life.
mm,
And then the second thing I was going to share was quite a few people asked me at readings or different events, how do you write poems? And honestly, the truth is,
Mm.
I have I don't really write poems. I just write them down. So the best way to imagine would be if a member of your family phones you and says, "Hi, it's me," you know it's them. And it's the same. When a poem arrives, I know it's a poem, so I write it down. But as to where they come from, I have no idea. Wherever they lived before they hit me, I suppose.
Yeah. Mm. Now that reminds me of a line from a poem by um, an Irish poet. I can't remember his first name. Bruce Mann. Uh, Everything is going to be all right. That poem, and it contains the line, "The
Oh,
poems flow from the hand or from the pen unbidden." Yeah.
oh, yeah, I remember. I'm trying to think who that is too. I want to say Michael Donaghy, but I don't think it is.
No,
It's
it's
beautiful.
then yeah, and that's yeah, that came for me. I was just reminded of it by what you just said about the poems just arriving. But does that mean all the crafting of them is happening in a back room or somewhere, or does it arrive and then you craft the poem in some way, or do you not have to craft them?
Um, I think from speaking to other writers, everyone's process is very different.
Mm.
For me, they 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 arrive in a kind of download, and sometimes the title arrives first, and then the poem will arrive a little later. And sometimes the first line arrives, and then the title arrives later. And in general terms, they're quite concise. And the more inclination I feel to mess with them, the less authentic that is. Generally speaking, they arrive as they're intended. And I've learned over the years, resist the temptation to tinker. Sometimes I do change. If a change appears, I might get a later information that says, nah, change that word. Or I might wake up in the night and realize, like last night I woke up and realized, no. And I changed it this
Ah.
morning. It's quite intuitive. And I don't know for you whether that, I mean, you paint, and when you're painting, do you have a sense of, I'm doing this, I'm crafting this, or do you have a sense that it's a bit of both, or I don't know.
Uh, Generally speaking, right. So when I write, I mean, back in the day, I I used to wake up with whole essays for university, for example. I used to wake up
Right.
and
Right.
the whole thing was there. I could just write it down. I didn't have to particularly think
Hmm.
about it. Um, and that has served me well through the years. It's also served me quite badly at times because I tend to write first drafts that look finished, and therefore can't get
Ah,
any sensible feedback on them. And
right.
then
Right.
I can sometimes fall into the myth of believing that it's finished when it isn't. So it would benefit from a really good editing.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you know,
Hmm.
and editors can be terribly useful, especially
They
someone like
can.
me who's not a craftsperson. Actually, because I've never learnt the craft of painting or the craft of writing, I've just
Hmm.
done it. Sometimes I can miss the fact that there is a craft. I can easily do that. Um,
Ah.
yeah, uh, I don't think I have that so much now. Certainly with painting, I don't. I just throw things around until things look right.
Hmm.
I don't think it's quite the same with printmaking, um, where there's a bit more of a
Ah.
process of, shall I cut this bit now? Shall I stick this? You
Right.
know, because
Right.
with paint, I can just layer it up and scrape it off. Printmaking, you
Yeah.
stick it together and then you have to throw it away, or no, or just turn it into another print. Um, so does that apply to your art making then? The images arriving.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's really interesting talking with you about this as well, what people's different processes are. I think it's a different, when I'm painting, it's a different process because quite often I would start with exploring an idea. So at the moment I'm doing a series on boundaries and horizons,
Mhm.
and they're often sea and land, or they might be they might be water and soil or whatever. And so in painting, I'm tending to start with an idea, and then I do things with paint until something appears that I feel, okay, and I kind of have a click. I know it when
Yeah.
when it's there, which is maybe what you're describing. Um, so there's a lot more throwing paint around than there is throwing words around.
Yeah.
I think it's very different in that way.
Yeah.
And I don't, when I'm writing poetry, I don't really start with an idea. I start with the poem that appears in my head.
Yes.
Whereas with paint, I start with an idea and then I do stuff with paint until the idea takes form in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm liking that. You see, I think there are painters, but I am not one who can look at something and think, I'm going to paint that. And they paint that. And, and I can't do that. Um,
No, me
and,
neither.
and I no, and I think there is an enormous skill in looking and representing, something. That's not what I do. Uh, I don't have the craft skills to do it, but I do look and I do represent, but it's not that process. It's not camera
No,
like. Yeah.
there's something you've just said there that has given me a thought that had never occurred to me before. And that is in painting in the way that you do. And it sounds like I do a similar way. It's more like mime. It's like when you show someone something without words or saying anything or an explanation, but it's a communication without narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you know if it's working?
A painting,
Mm.
if it pleases me, I go on messing with it and doing what I'm doing. And at a certain point, I get like, if you eat something delicious, you feel like, that kind of yum. I get a feeling of delight and I'm like, oh, that's, yeah. And I look at it. And when I look at it and I feel, absolutely, yeah, look at that. And
Ah,
I know because if somebody asks to buy it, I feel a mixture of joy and sorrow. The ones that I miss the most when they go to live with someone else, that's
yeah,
how I know that they that's how I know the most. I send them away and I feel I'm like one's going to Australia and I'm excited for it that it's going to Australia and I miss it.
that's brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Mm.
So how did you learn to do this? I mean, did you go to art school or poetry school
No.
or
um, I didn't go to poetry school. I went to Oxford and I studied English. And I've always written and had quite a lot of feedback on my writing in various forms over the years. So I've written articles and long form writing, and so I think I've done a certain amount of learning how to write.
yeah, and the arts?
Um, and the art, I just started doing it, and I realised that I'm
Mm,
allowed to do this.
brilliant. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I I I had the fantasy. I mean, I painted for a long time, often quite badly, and I um and sometimes they came out really well, and I liked them, and people liked them. And then I went to do the year-long uh, program at St Ives, the Porthmeal program, because I thought I need to get serious about this. I'm going to go and find my voice. And obviously, what I did for quite a long time in that was find everybody else's voice because you're trying things, you find trying things out and go, oh, maybe I could be a bit like that, or maybe I could do this. And, uh, and of course, I knew I was learning because I produced some of the worst stuff I'd done because I was trying this and then trying that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And it was also one of the most shocking experiences for me when, I mean, my tutor was Kate Southworth, who's absolutely brilliant, I have to say. Um, Absolutely great. And I said, I'm having such difficulty trying to abstract this view of Priest's Cave down at Cape Cornwall. And she said, "Oh, you know your problem with that?" I said, "What's that?" She said, "Well, you're trying to paint it." I said, "Yes, yes, it's St Ives School of Painting. That's
And
what I'm here." And she said, "Well, art's not just painting. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're trying to put too much into a painting. Don't try and paint all of that." It was like, "Oh
oh,
God."
and her saying that enabled you. It sounded like it just enabled you in a way to just do what you
Yeah, I got quite hooked on the
wanted.
fact that it's the St Ives School of Painting. I thought, "Well,
Oh yes,
I've got to do painting." So no, no, it's art. You don't have to do painting.
I think it reminds me as well of something I really love about working with you is that I feel like in the work that we've done together, you're so free. So if you feel like, I think what we need here is we need some business input, we need some poetry, we need a question, you'll just do it because you trust that process within yourself and you trust that knowing. And it sounds like you're finding that in your art.
Mm. Yes, yeah. You're right. We could talk about this for several weeks, but
I know.
we're on 40 something minutes. I mean, I don't know. Would it be too much of an imposition to ask you to read a poem? Is that possible, or is that too much for this morning?
No, it would be my pleasure. And how would you like me to choose one at random, or is there
Something
some,
that's not
I don't know.
something that means something to you that fits into about 2 or 3 minutes because we have 2 or 3 minutes available.
Okay, right. This will probably take less than 2 minutes. And I've chosen this partly at random because it's in front of me, but also because I like the last line. And
Okay.
it's called the duty we owe our dead. The duty we owe our dead is only to live. No need for chariots to drag their bodies round city walls, nor to hold them till they stiffen. Rather, to take our days in the sun, ample and replete, intricate and immersed, as they took theirs. To face our storms, wearing inherited jewelled breastplates or bespoke feathered cloaks, all our precious paraphernalia. The rich soil of our beloved dead yields the flowers of our todays. We raise our faces to the sun, unbowed, and in that unquenchable fashion, we live. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Ah, that's. I almost don't want to say anything else other than thank you for that. Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah. But I'm going to because I found myself as you were saying it thinking, yeah, and you reminded me so much of. Um, do you know the group Show of Hands at all? They're a
No, but I'm going to
Devon-based
write it
folk.
down.
Yeah. Well, there's a song by Steve Knightley, who's this amazing
Show of
Devon-based
hands.
folk writer, been folk musician of the year many times. Um, and he wrote a song to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the first ending of the First World War, called Requiem, and it was written to the tune of The
Right.
Parting Glass. And
Oh,
it had a similar, you know,
oh,
the best requiem you have for me is to be alive, to live,
live.
to
Just
live,
live.
just live. Yeah, uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Elizabeth, um, just delightful. Thank you so much. Let me say a couple of words to finish off the episode, and then I'll come back to say a proper thank
Sure.
you to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, everybody, thank you very much for watching or listening. You will, as ever, notice there are connections between this episode and some of the others. So, if you have the chance, please do dip into some of the episodes. Maybe the ones Elizabeth mentioned, like the Jeff Mead one about story, Helena's one about love, Phoebe's one about the modern human world. Um, but they're all connected. Um, Elizabeth, thank you so much. It's been brilliant to work with you over the years, and lovely to have you here, you, your art, your poetry, and your nowness here today.
Thank you. An honour and a pleasure, and happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Go well.
Bye. Bye.